Hey friends, I'm Christy, and you're listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast for women who are done playing small. If you've been shrinking to keep the peace or waiting for permission to want more, climb aboard because we are going to make some waves together. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you're never left stranded on the shore. And if you want a more connected experience, visit thrivewithchristy.com to learn more about the Thrive Collective, a community that combines boat rocking energy with the grounding effects of yoga and breathwork with live calls and classes. Now on to the show. I am thrilled to have my guest today. Maggie Blackburn has a decade of product marketing and go-to-market experience at companies like Deloitte, Slack, and Asana. She committed to full-time self-employment in December 2024 and is now a champion for portfolio careers, including her own. She helps curious, multidimensional women through coaching, workshops, cohorts, and community events, helps startups as a fractional marketing generalist, and helps companies and communities design retreats, which is something near and dear to my heart. We connected via LinkedIn, where Maggie is very active and offers a wealth of information to anyone curious about building their own portfolio career. Welcome to the show, Maggie. Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. We did some work together on some, marketing strategy for my yoga and coaching community, and I was so interested. And also, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, all these choices and directions that we can go, but you really helped me hone in on my ideal client and activities or just tactics that I could use to start to build my audience. So love that you are bringing all of this experience to people to build their portfolio career. So, kind of tell us exactly what that means and what you're doing with your portfolio career right now.
Yeah, so I stumbled upon the term portfolio career. Like didn't necessarily leave and say I'm going to start a portfolio career, but a portfolio career is basically a career made up of multiple income streams. It's dynamic, it's flexible, and it allows you to be multi-passionate and multi-dimensional because you can really design a career how you want it. And for me, it relieved a lot of pressure out of choosing the next thing, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but just like choosing what do I do next after a decade-long career, it made it feel more light and fun for me. So it's really a way to just create your own career, and it can change, and I love that part of it. Yeah.
Yes, I love that you mentioned change because I think that I'm Gen X, so I was raised a certain way and we were raised by parents who kept the same job their entire careers. So, putting 30, 40 years into a company, retiring with a pension, whatever that looked like. My generation's starting to sort of shift at this midlife point, and just like I did, but allowing yourself to change and evolve with your interests is really interesting. I love that you discovered this about yourself. On your website, you talk about being 25 and realizing that you might want something a little bit different. I guess what sort of prompted that initial desire to change or look into something different?
I honestly probably there's little signals along the way, maybe starting around, my mid-20s, but I didn't necessarily listen to them until like 29, when I was about to turn 30. And so I think the fact that I was going to turn 30 and like what am I doing with my life? Do I want to continue down this path? Um, I had been working in tech in product marketing for a decade, and so it felt stable and it felt like that was what I knew what I wanted to do. But again, the kind of voice in my head that said, "Is this really what you want to do for the next 20 years of your life, 30 years of your life?" kept coming up. And then finally, I think there was a moment where I had moved to New York. It had been about a year originally with one company, and then I moved to a different company. And a few months into the role, I just felt like it wasn't right. And I think I was trying to push it. I was trying to, okay, if I don't like this job, might as well try to get more money or get the promotion. Maybe that'll make me feel happy. And there was just like a moment where this has never really happened to me, but I had this conversation with the manager and it just went really, really poorly. And I was crying and it was just like not great. I don't know if anyone else has been in that situation, but it was a wake up call for me to be like, okay, why am I here? I need a bigger change than just moving from another company. I actually have to go and fix like whatever the root problem is here, and that's gonna I had to look in the mirror and really figure that out.
Mm. I love that you had that intuitive nudge because some people, it takes them a long time to listen to that if they ever do. And a lot of people don't. I recently talked to an intuitive coach on the show, and she had the same sort of corporate versus intuitive nudge, and listening to that. Have you always been sort of a free spirit, and have you always listened to that voice, I guess, or was that kind of the first
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, good question. I feel like I haven't, in some ways, and I have in other ways. So, in the ways that I have, it's been I've always loved to travel, and I didn't really travel outside of the US until I left college and took my first trip. And it was sort of like, oh, wow, there's a whole nother world of possibilities and things. And I saw other people who were also traveling, solo traveling, doing that. And so I tried that. And I think that was my first taste into more of that free spirit life where I would meet people who didn't know exactly what their next 3 months would look like. Meanwhile, me, I was only on 2 weeks of PTO and just there for a couple of weeks, but it just made me feel like maybe I could do that one day or like maybe that could be something I explore one day. So there was some of it in me, but I think I also just followed I'm a rule follower as well. So it was a lot around me not wanting to deviate too much from the norm, and I had a lot of people around me, friends and people from college and whatnot that just followed that path, and so that's why I say it's kind of both because have that side to me, but then I also have the side where I'm like, I'm gonna just work really hard at this job. This is important. A lot of my identity was tied up into my work. And so whenever something like that manager conversation, for example, happened, it just like crumbled what I had. So it's definitely been a big change and a shift in how I view work and how I want to live my life. But I think, yeah, I'm free spirited, but I'm also hardworking, so I don't know.
Are you a Gemini by chance? Because I'm a Gemini, and I feel like maybe that's the
I feel like Gemini is somewhere in that chart. I'm a Sagittarius though, so the travel makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yes. So my mom is Sagittarius, and she's very much a follow your heart kind of person.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just celebrated a birthday recently, and right now when we're recording, I'm on a solo trip, and my husband's having a horseback adventure. He's on an excursion, and so yeah, I think that I'm the same way. Very much was like, okay, here's my career path, and here's where I'm going to go. And then I discovered yoga, kind of tapped into a different type of spirituality, love solo travel, love it. So everything you're saying makes sense to me for sure. I love that. So we're talking about rule following, career path, expectations from others. So many women feel locked into that idea. What would be something that would be a shift or something that you would recommend thinking about as you consider breaking out of that mold? Because
Hmm.
this is rock the damn boat. So
Yes. I mean, the thing is, breaking out of the mold, there's a few things. Like, I think the first thing you have to do is be really honest with yourself. And that is really hard to do. And but the first step with anything is like that awareness, but also being really honest and saying, what do I actually want? What do I really want? And am I on that path? Is what I'm doing right now going to get me there? Or if I follow what I'm doing now, do I just know where that path's going to lead? And so I think like the first step is to be really honest. Another step is to also just be aware of the thoughts and the things that you're telling yourself because that becomes your reality. It becomes what you live day to day. So if you're telling yourself that, oh, I can't quit my job because I'm going to go on the streets. I was literally thinking these thoughts, the worst case scenario. Then leaving out of a place of fear isn't necessarily the right move. So I think it is having that honesty and awareness with yourself first and foremost, and then taking that action towards becoming that other person that you want to be. And it takes a long time.
Yeah. One of the things that I did in making the decision to leave the corporate role that I had, I started planning pretty far in advance. And so it's like you said, you may have to listen to that voice for a long time. So I started thinking about things like money in the bank and, financial investing. And I know one of the things you have an Airbnb. And so there's ways that we can start to set ourselves up for success so that if that steady paycheck isn't there, because it probably won't be, then there's some financial security. Once you said, "Okay, I'm doing this," were there things from a financial standpoint or a structure standpoint that you put into place?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily have a clear I think this was my one of my biggest blockers. So there are two. I feel like one was the financial piece and the second one was not knowing what to do next because
Mhm.
again, I was just on this marketing path and my original idea was maybe I can go do marketing for the same sort of companies I was doing before but just on my own. But regarding the financial piece, it was building up the savings. I went into a spreadsheet. Like I know there's a lot of tools and things that you can do this. And I use some of those now to just help aggregate my finances. But I just went and looked at all of the things I was spending money on and just got a current state of what that looked like. Because I was earning more of a high salary, I knew that I was earning more still than I was spending, but I didn't know what the delta was. And so a lot of people may be in that similar situation. And so just doing that audit. And then I also looked at, okay, if I left, would I want to keep the same lifestyle? Would I be okay maybe not spending money on certain things? And so I also did a comparison there. So now, I don't necessarily spend money on things that I don't really find value or enjoy. There's some little things like, for example, I used to get my hair done every few months. I don't necessarily do that anymore. And it's not like it's ruined my the quality of my life or anything. I still do little things here and there to treat myself, but that's just an example. The second thing is to get clear on what you want to do. You have to actually start experimenting with things. And so that's what I also did when I was in my full time role. I started these experiments that turned into some of them, things like an Airbnb or some of these like learning how to invoice and write proposals and get my first clients. And that really helped me build the confidence to leave. But it was like a 2-year process before I
Okay.
actually, yeah, left. And I feel like that's a long time, but I was just in this state again of just fear.
But that's great transparency for the listening audience because I think that there's this idea you could get to this breaking point and okay, I quit, or not knowing when to make that leap. And if it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years. I mean, I was doing passion projects on the side for probably 5 years, weekend retreats, which didn't interfere with my corporate job. I had a yoga studio for 2 years, which I taught in the evenings, and I had a couple of teachers on staff that taught during the day. And it was a little problematic with work travel at times, but all of those things helped me explore what I really wanted to do. And now even with going back to a corporate role, I still want to continue to build a thriving yoga community. Working with you and us talking about, okay, my ideal client is in like a personal growth phase or she's healing from something. And I just assumed that she had this get up and go momentum. And it's like, no, I mean, when I look at, I've been sober for 8 years now, and it's like, oh, I've grown and changed over that 8 years in tremendous ways. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
get there when you
interesting.
get there.
Totally, like, everyone's on their same journey, and looking back, maybe I could have left sooner, but I feel like there were definitely moments of, "Okay, this is what I needed to actually move," because right before I left, I was trying to pivot from marketing into events and was trying to apply internally for a role, didn't get the role because I didn't necessarily have on paper events experience, but then that ended up happening where I just found the experience myself, so it all happens for a reason.
Very much so. I'm a firm believer in that, and sometimes we cannot see that reason at the time, and we just have like blind faith that something is going to work out. At the heart of everything you do is marketing strategy. I love the wealth of information you provide in LinkedIn and in your newsletter. Tell us a little bit about how you are picking content, how you're working with people, whether it's someone being inspired by what you do or maybe someone getting to know you a little bit better. What lights you up from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was doing marketing for B2B SaaS software, it's like totally different than marketing yourself, right? It's when you're marketing yourself or your business, you can be more creative, you can be more playful and more fun. And I've really enjoyed leading into that side of content and that side of the marketing, and even just learning more about marketing that I hadn't really even touched in a large organization. But in terms of how I structure or pick out content themes, I think about who my audience is and who I want to help essentially. So even if you don't have necessarily an audience or you're just starting out, it's about who you want to help and thinking about your day to day of, do I actually want to help this person and what motivates this person? What is challenging them? And really having a sense of empathy for that person. And I think for me it's helpful because it's sort of me now, me a few years ago, like in a similar journey. So a lot of times I think people fall into that wanting to help your younger self. But also I've been talking to a lot of other women in the space just because I want to validate, what am I building? What is my messaging? All of that sort of thing. So, having conversations with people, looking at comments, looking at questions that people ask, that all is great signal to figure out what my next newsletter topic might be. There's so much I can talk about. Like it can feed into LinkedIn, right? Like if you post on LinkedIn and that post has a good number of comments, why not make it into a newsletter? And so you're doing a little bit less work and having to think of new ideas all the time and just repurposing some of those because there's so much content everywhere. How can you work a little bit smarter is how I think about it too.
Well, I love your newsletter. And of course, we'll give everybody information at the end of the show to find you and subscribe and follow you on LinkedIn and all of that. But I think that you are really great at discerning what to put that's going to be helpful. So I certainly appreciate that. And especially too, like you said, it could be that you're just in exploration phase and you give people things to think about that might help them rock the boat of their own career and decide to do something different. So
Yeah, I think it's really hard to share when you are in that middle period and you don't necessarily have the end result yet. But sharing and opening up and being vulnerable, you don't have to share everything that's going on in your mind, but just sharing the behind the scenes, I think is so powerful, especially right now, because we are living in the age of AI and we're not sure exactly what's AI generated or what someone wrote. And so the more you can share your human story and share examples and things like that, I do think that that differentiates a lot of people from just more of the generic thought leadership.
I'm seeing AI used on realtor listings now, where it's like, and then you can't tell if it was furnished. It's interesting how it's creeping in. You and I talked a little bit on our session about finding a platform and sticking with it. So I know you are really concentrated on LinkedIn. What is maybe some advice you could give people about that topic?
Yeah, it's thinking about what you like to consume and also where your audience is, right? So my audience, former corporate or maybe still in a corporate role, and so LinkedIn makes a lot of sense. I also, when I first started out, really just wanted to write. I didn't really want to show my face anywhere, and so for me, a newsletter made sense. When you write a newsletter or a podcast or somewhere, you need like a social platform or somewhere to put it. That could also be Substack, for example. Uh, and and so I would just start there is what is the newsletter, podcast, that longer form piece that you can repeat. It doesn't have to be every week. It could be every other week and make it simple. And then I just started posting once per week on LinkedIn. And then whenever I had an idea for a post, I would just write it. And then over time it grew. So it doesn't have to start 5 posts per week or whatever exact marketing calendar you have in your mind. It can start out really small. And I think that helped a lot because I knew I had a schedule. I was like, okay, Monday, it'll go out and then I'll post. And that's it.
Yeah, and with all of the scheduling tools now, it makes it easy. I mean, I love seeing real-time feedback or if something sparks my curiosity, I might change what I'm going to post to be more relevant in the moment, but certainly those scheduling tools can help you not feel overwhelmed. So,
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much also with Claude that I use. I don't know how much you wanna talk about that, but just there's a lot that you can get help with. Refining writing, yes, I write my own posts and things like that still, but there's a lot of just automations and time-saving things that you can also use.
well, it's interesting. You're starting to host some workshops with Claude and how to use Claude Cowork. We'll save that for people to follow you and get some information on Claude because you posted on LinkedIn about when you started using Claude Cowork, and it was around the same time I was too. And so you were kind of asking how people were using it. And I had just discovered the connect to Gmail and being able to draft emails that go into your draft and then, refine them as however you want to. I sent the questions to you for the podcast using Claude Cowork. So that was a great example of using it. And I'm sure I've barely scratched the surface. And with any of those tools, they change every day. So
Change so fast, yeah.
but yes, all of these things that we can start to learn and help streamline. Now, as far as in-person events, I want to know more about what you're doing with retreats because that is something I've hosted several and I love that in-person connection. So let's talk a little about that.
Yeah, last year I helped communities host their retreat, being their sort of on-site coordinator, helping them figure out what the agenda looks like, and really being that thought partner with them. I also have helped companies. The first retreat I actually ever helped with was a 150-person company retreat, offsite, whatever you want to call it, in San Diego. And that was my first foray. I was helping a friend that has founded Recess, which is a offsite company. And I just really love bringing people together. And I was always that person on the team scheduling the happy hour, figuring out like what the fun plans were after work, and it just made natural sense to do that. I love traveling as well. It sort of all blends into this, and I was doing a lot more of that last year, as well as just event production, conferences, a lot of these things. And this year I've slowed it down a little bit. I also am just trying to focus on community events as well because one day I do want to host my own retreat. Right now, I'm just building my audience and forming a community in New York and other cities that I travel to and taking it from there.
Well, I love that. It is very fulfilling to host your own retreat for sure. It's stressful and it definitely puts a different type of pressure, but at the same time, like I love finishing a retreat and people saying I get consistent feedback around thank you for creating this safe space. And I think that in person people can be more vulnerable and there's you can always you can find content to learn anything, but, like, actually connecting with people is so much different.
I know. And it's different when you travel. I think that's why I like the element where you're staying together and you're having meals together. And it's not just a one time sort of event. There's a lot of learnings after the retreat as well that as you integrate into whatever you are bringing back from it. So I also really enjoy that.
If you had a retreat destination that you could pick, your ideal retreat destination, what would that be?
That's a hard question because I did one of my first retreats I went on was in Bali, which is like the retreat destination.
Yes.
And it was amazing. It was a yoga retreat, so not like business focused or anything, but Bali was amazing. I would love to go back. I think as well as I've been to Mexico a bunch, but I just love Mexico. So I think a retreat there where it's a mix of sun and beach and relaxation,
Yes.
and there's also a lot of spiritual elements in certain cities there. I like the
I love that.
tropical locations, I think.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I see you said it out loud, so now we'll manifest that for you
Thank
is
you.
a Mexico retreat. I loved Bali too. I went 2 years ago, and now I'm going with the same retreat leader to Thailand, which was always on the top of my list, and I thought, "Well, if I make it to Bali, that's maybe
Yeah.
even better," but no, she's hosting one
Thailand, okay,
next
Thailand would
fall.
be amazing too. Or
Well,
Vietnam as well. Yeah.
I'm excited to go to Thailand. I Those are probably the 2 most, exotic retreat destinations I've been to, but I've been to a couple in the mountains. You said you like the tropical vibe, so I guess
I
that
think
kinda
for
answers
retreats I
that. You like the
do,
beach.
but I actually am more of a mountains person. I love skiing, and just being in that environment, or lake, Lake Tahoe, love Lake Tahoe.
Yes. Yes.
So I am probably more of a mountains person than a beach person, but for a retreat, I'm like maybe lean more towards beach.
I'm in Lake Tahoe right now, and I was just in Nevada City, California. Being in the forest for me is so healing. I love hiking in the tall trees. That's part of the flexibility of having this portfolio career is being able to work nomadically and be wherever you want.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to do too. I remember when I was in a role where I wasn't really allowed to travel unless I took PTO, and I was like, I want to work wherever I want and whenever I want.
Yes, the woman who built the yoga studio, the online yoga community I've been in, said the same thing. The PTO just wasn't enough to travel, and her husband ended up sailing the world for a year, and she recorded yoga videos in exotic destinations. So, I mean, something like that, creating content or working for companies, plenty of ways to find something to support those multiple streams of income. That's what I always think about. Used to be we'd say multi-passionate entrepreneur and so there's different language you can use, but portfolio career is great because you think about all those different things. So for the woman who is at the starting line and wants to explore this, what would you want her to hear?
Yeah, I would say, and I know I mentioned this before, but your thoughts are not your reality. And so just know that. And it's never too late to start in any small way. So even if you had a dream, an idea, you paused it for a while and you feel like it's not going to happen, you can always pick it back up and try again. And so I think that has happened to me a few times with either different projects I've wanted to pursue. I didn't necessarily dream of leaving my job, but it was because of a few different factors and wanting to work wherever I wanted and whenever I wanted. And so if you have that goal and desire, you can make it happen, as long as you sort of sit with yourself and be honest.
What do you think too, tapping into what other people tell you you're great at? I'm terrible at giving myself credit. And in writing a blog and people saying, "Oh, I love your writing." And so taking that into exploring, writing or whatever that might look like. You worked with a coach kind of early on
Mhm.
too, is that right? To help sort of figure out where to go?
Yeah, in that moment that I described earlier with the manager conversation, that was when I got a coach after that. I was like, I need to figure out what to do with my life. And I got a coach, and I do really think that was a transformative part of me being able to do a lot of the things that you see now, even though I was in the middle of it. Like the Airbnb, for example, having to get through financial fear of putting putting that deposit down and down payment, or leaving the corporate job, or figuring out like all these ideas that I had that I just felt like I couldn't pick one. It helps to have a partner if you want to move faster, I think, towards a goal.
Yes. Now, do the people who work with you tend to be people who are needing that mindset shift, or do they kind of already know what they want to do and they're working with you to figure out how to make it happen?
I think it's a little bit more towards the latter, but there is definitely mindset work involved, because even though you might know you want something, there could be something that's stopping you. Usually, the people who come to me, typically women who want to build a portfolio career. So, even just knowing that like this sort of lifestyle and career is an option and it's attractive to them was more than what I had, I think, when I first came in. So, they're a little bit farther along, but then they also have something maybe that is stopping them, the fear of starting, the not knowing, if this is the right thing, and then maybe giving up on it because they're not that good at it yet.
Yeah, I think for anyone who's wondering if they want to turn that side project into a business and then how to support it in other ways if that isn't going to be enough. Could
Yeah.
certainly benefit from working with you. Anyone who's watching on YouTube is going to see that I have the sun now
Oh,
coming in
yeah.
on my face, but I keep trying to shift. How can people find you? Because I was kind of in that position, and between free workshops that you do on Maven and content that you post on LinkedIn, your newsletter, where's the best resources?
Right before I share the resources, I think that point around how do I pay for my lifestyle or how do I make this work? I think a good part of a portfolio career also includes a portion of your income that comes from something like, that stability, an anchor income portion that
Mm,
I call it,
mhm,
where it is helping you pay your bills and helping your nervous system know that there is money coming in. And so that could come from a full-time job. It could come from a fractional client. It could come from long-term contracts, whatever it might be. But just having like the baseline also helps while you pursue the other creative, fun things in the career as well. But where people can find me, LinkedIn definitely, and my newsletter. I post there every week. And I also like sharing stories of women who've built their portfolio careers or kind of going through that similar journey. And I'm also starting to post more on Instagram. So that's more like behind the scenes or things like that. But yeah, I'm only posting there because I feel like LinkedIn and my newsletter, I have to a good rhythm now.
yeah, that's great. So yeah, you could always you start strong somewhere and then explore other avenues. I
Yeah.
love the creative aspect of Instagram. I don't want the pressure to have all these likes and follows or comment, the engagement piece on Instagram. I know that's important, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I just want to share a fun video and be okay with that.
And
So
I think those are the people that will connect with you and have already connected with you because I know you built just an amazing community as well. And so, yeah, doing that, you just attract the people back.
I love to close the show by asking people who their boat rocking role model is. You have taken this sort of unconventional career path, and that is absolutely why I considered this to be a great conversation for the show. So, who inspires you to rock the boat?
Yeah, I mean, the person I probably found out from Portfolio Careers was Anna Mack, and so I feel like she's the queen of portfolio careers and talks about it a bunch. She's in Australia, but I just follow her Substack and her content as well because it inspired me, and now I'm talking about it too because I think just more people can live this sort of life and have both the stability and the freedom, if they're willing to try it out too.
That's great. I haven't counted up all my interviews, but I have yet to have someone give the same boat rocking role model, which I love because I think we just are so drawn to different people and different people inspire us. And that to me also shows that whether you're building a community or a business, like there's room for everybody. And I think that's one of the things that can be intimidating about going out on your own.
I know when you're looking at other people like, well, they're building the same thing as me, it can be intimidating and keep you from starting. But I also think it's like, it's not the exact same because you are the differentiator, your story and your experience and all of those things.
Yes. Well, obviously, connected on LinkedIn. Everything that you shared has been very inspiring to me. And so I hope that the listeners find that same inspiration, that spark of intuition if they're looking for a change. I will share all of the links for where to find you in the show notes. And Maggie, I just want to thank you again for coming on. It's been great to chat with you here.
Yeah, it's been so nice catching up and just talking about it more. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me on any of those platforms. And yeah, thanks for having me again.
All right. And thank you to everyone for listening. You've been listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast produced and recorded by Christy Hughes. You can follow, subscribe on both Apple and Spotify, and your 5-star review goes a long way. Thank you so much for your support of the show.